You know that highly specific feeling of disbelief when you're, like, standing in line at the grocery store?
Oh, yeah, completely.
Right. Or maybe you're trapped in this seemingly endless afternoon strategy meeting, and you witness a moment of just pure, unadulterated
Yeah,
foolishness.
where you're watching an adult make a decision that completely defies logic.
Exactly. And it literally makes you physically blink. In your head, you're grasping for a word to describe what you just saw. But, I mean, calling it dumb or stupid just feels horribly inadequate.
It really does. It's way too simple.
It's kind of like standing in the middle of a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane and describing it by simply saying, it's wet.
Right, yeah. It completely flattens the reality of the situation. Because we instinctively know, just from moving through society, that not all bad judgment is created equal.
No, definitely not.
There's this vast, nuanced landscape of folly out there. I mean, a bad decision born out of panic looks and feels entirely different than a bad decision born out of sheer arrogance.
Oh, totally.
Each type of foolishness has its own distinct psychological profile, you
Yeah.
know, its own underlying mechanism and its own unique flavor.
Which is exactly what we're digging into today. We have a fantastic set of sources excerpted from a text called The Lexicon of Folly.
It's a great read.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to arm you, the listener, with a highly precise, advanced vocabulary to articulate exactly what kind of bad judgment you are witnessing out there in the wild.
Yeah, giving you the actual tools to describe it.
Right. We're going to map this out, moving from the sharp precision of formal literature all the way down to the everyday idioms we use to, soften the blow. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's see what.
Because having the exact right word for the exact right kind of foolishness isn't just some party trick. It is the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed and understanding human behavior.
Absolutely. I mean, careful communicators like authors, speechwriters, historians, they treat vocabulary as a diagnostic tool.
Right, they don't just throw words around.
Exactly. They go out of their way to avoid blunt instrument words like foolish or stupid, because those words don't actually tell you anything about the mechanism of a failure.
They're just too broad.
Yeah. They don't want to just report that someone made a mistake. They want to capture the specific pathology of that mistake.
Right. Like, was the person insulated by their own ego?
Yes. Or were they just running on autopilot? Or were they using their lack of understanding as an actual weapon?
Oh, that's a good point.
The vocabulary we choose completely shifts how we assign blame, and how we understand the context of the action.
Well, let's start with perhaps the most frustrating paradox of poor judgment. The combination of absolute zero substance and unwavering absolute confidence.
Oh, the worst kind.
Right. We were talking about the smug and the empty. And the first word the source text gives us to describe this is fatuous. Pronounced fatuous.
Yeah, fatuous. What's fascinating here is the absolute disconnect between the speaker's self-perception and reality.
So what does it actually mean, formally?
To be fatuous means to be silly, foolish, or pointless, but specifically in a self-satisfied or smug way. They fundamentally believe they are being exceptionally clever.
Ah, so they think they're nailing it.
Exactly. They're insulated from the reality of their own foolishness by a massive layer of ego. Synonyms for this would be, inane, vacuous, mindless, or ludicrous.
The source material had this great example to illustrate it. It was something like he made a fatuous comment about the weather, completely unaware that the room had fallen into an uncomfortable silence.
That paints the picture perfectly.
It totally does. It makes me think
Yeah.
of that one guy, and I mean, every corporate office has one, who confidently takes the floor during a tense meeting.
Oh, no, I know exactly where this is going.
Right. He draws this highly convoluted, completely irrelevant matrix on the whiteboard and triumphantly solves a problem that absolutely no one in the room was actually having.
Yes. And he steps back, just entirely pleased with himself, waiting for applause.
While the rest of the room just stares at their shoes in uncomfortable silence. I mean, he isn't just wrong. He is embarrassingly proud of being wrong.
That corporate meeting scenario captures the mechanics of it perfectly.
Right.
Because fatuousness requires an audience, even if the audience is just the speaker themselves in their own head.
Oh, wow. So it's like a performance.
Yeah, it's almost a defense mechanism. If you project enough unearned confidence, you might just convince yourself, and hopefully others, that you actually have substance.
That's wild.
The real tragedy of the fatuous person is that they are entirely unaware of the uncomfortable silence they leave in their wake. They actually mistake the room's stunned disbelief for awe.
Okay, so that is the ego-driven side of the spectrum. But what happens when we strip away that smugness?
You mean when there's no ego left?
Yeah. What if we remove the ego, remove the confidence, and we are just left with a void? That brings us to two interconnected concepts from the lexicon that deal with pure emptiness. Inane, pronounced inane, and vacuous, pronounced vacuous.
Right. These two words explore the reality of what happens when the human mind just fundamentally disengages, either socially or internally.
So they both mean empty, basically.
They deal with the absence of meaning, yes, but they tackle it from two slightly different angles.
I want to pause here, actually, and push back a bit, because as I read through the source material, I found myself really struggling to separate these two in the wild.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, say I'm trapped at a terrible networking event, and I'm listening to a reality TV star blather on endlessly about absolutely nothing. Is that dialogue inane, or is it vacuous? Because functionally, they seem identical to me.
That is the perfect scenario to draw the boundary between the two, actually. Think of inane as the output, the action, the words, the social filler.
Okay.
Inane describes something that lacks sense, significance, or ideas. It's superficial babble. Some synonyms are asinine, vapid, superficial, or senseless.
Like the reality star talking about breakfast.
Exactly. The source gave a great example. The talk show host kept interrupting the serious debate with inane questions about the guests' favorite colors.
Ah, that's infuriating.
It is. It lowers the collective intelligence of the room simply by demanding attention for something utterly devoid of substance. We often produce inane chatter because we're just terrified of silence. It's a social reflex.
Okay, so the words themselves are the inane output. Then where does vacuous fit in? Because you mentioned it's more about the internal state.
Yes, vacuous draws from its root, meaning vacuum. It means literally empty. It describes a complete lack of thought, intelligence, or serious purpose.
Like a blank slate.
Right. Synonyms would be blank, expressionless, brainless, or airheaded. You can produce an inane comment because you have a vacuous mind in that moment.
So they're connected but different.
Yeah. The source example was she answered the difficult question with a vacuous smile, proving she hadn't listened to a single word of the lecture.
Oh, that makes sense. So if you're at that same networking event and you completely zone out because you're exhausted and you just offer a blank, expressionless smile while someone is talking.
That smile is vacuous. It reveals the absolute void where comprehension or engagement should be.
Okay, that distinction is really helpful. So is inane more about the action or words being produced, while vacuous is the actual state of mind, the literal emptiness behind the eyes?
Precisely. The inane is the noise you make to cover up the fact that you have nothing to say, and the vacuous is the silent, blank void.
Both are incredibly frustrating to deal with, but for completely different reasons.
Definitely.
I mean, dealing with the inane is exhausting because it's so noisy, but dealing with the vacuous is exhausting because there is nothing to grab onto. It's like talking to a black hole.
That's a great way to put it. And neither of them necessarily carries malice. Emptiness is often just a passive failure. People get tired, they lose focus, or they just don't have the capacity to engage deeply in that moment.
Right. It's harmless, relatively speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because the lexicon moves us away from passive emptiness into a territory where folly becomes active.
Yes. This is where bad judgment stops being an accident and starts becoming stubborn, entrenched, or even deliberately antagonistic.
We're moving from a passive lack of intelligence to the active, muscular resistance of it. And this brings us to a word with a highly descriptive etymological backstory, asinine, pronounced asinine.
I love the history of this word.
Me too.
Yeah.
I love this detail in the source material. The root word for asinine is the Latin word asinus, which literally translates to donkey.
It's so vivid.
It really is. So when we label a behavior as asinine, we aren't just saying it's wrong. We are inheriting this ancient agricultural metaphor.
Right.
We're implying that the behavior is as stubbornly, fundamentally ridiculous as a farm animal digging its hooves into the dirt and refusing to move.
That donkey metaphor is doing incredible heavy lifting psychologically. It means extremely or utterly foolish, with synonyms like idiotic, preposterous, daft, or half-witted.
So it adds a whole new dimension to bad judgment.
It does. When someone is being asinine, they have usually made an initial foolish mistake, but instead of recognizing it and correcting course, they dig in. They commit to the folly.
Oh, like the sunk cost fallacy?
Exactly. The source gave this example. It was an asinine excuse for missing the examination, and the supervisor refused to accept it.
Like someone offering a terrible excuse for a failure. They don't just say they forgot to do a report. They claim their dog ate their flash drive.
Right.
And then when someone questions that, they aggressively defend the lie. They demand you look at the dog's teeth marks.
Yeah, it isn't just factually incorrect. Offering that excuse is an insult to the listener's intelligence.
And that's why you can't reason with an asinine argument.
Much like trying to physically push a stubborn donkey, applying logic or force only makes the person resist harder. Admitting fault at that point feels like a structural collapse to their ego, so they just double down on the absurdity.
It's foolishness coupled with an infuriating lack of flexibility.
Yeah.
But even that digging in of the heels usually comes from a place of panic, right? Or a need to protect the ego.
Usually, yes.
So what happens when the failure to understand isn't born out of panic, but is actually a calculated strategy? What happens when ignorance is fully weaponized?
Oh, that brings us to one of the most powerful and frustrating behaviors in the entire lexicon, the act of being obtuse, pronounced obtuse.
The definition provided for obtuse is annoyingly insensitive or slow to understand. Synonyms are dull-witted, dense, slow, or imperceptive.
But it's the context that matters here. It's someone who is deliberately or frustratingly failing to comprehend what is glaringly obvious to everyone else in the room.
Right. The source example was, are you being intentionally obtuse, or do you truly not see the problem with this budget balance?
The key differentiator here is intent.
Intent. Okay.
Yeah. Unlike someone who is having a vacuous moment because they're tired, or someone who is asinine because they're trapped in a bad lie, an obtuse person is perceived as choosing not to understand.
So the refusal to comprehend is basically a power play. I kind of think of it as linguistic dodgeball.
Oh, I like that.
You know, you're standing there throwing perfectly clear, logical, undeniable points right at their chest, and they are just casually dipping out of the way.
Right, they refuse to catch the meaning on purpose.
Because the psychological reality is, if they catch the point, if they acknowledge that they understand what you are saying, they have to take responsibility for it.
Yep. They have to do the work to fix it or admit they're wrong.
So as a defense mechanism, they just play dumb. They become this impenetrable wall of non-comprehension.
That dodgeball analogy really highlights the exact transfer of energy that makes being obtuse so toxic.
How so?
Well, understanding requires mental labor and accountability. By being intentionally obtuse, the person goes on strike against that labor.
Oh, wow.
They force you to keep explaining, keep trying different angles, and keep expending energy while they just stand there and deflect. It totally exhausts the opponent.
That is maddening.
It is a highly aggravating category of foolishness because it requires the perpetrator to actually be somewhat clever. You know, you have to understand the point being made in order to effectively pretend you don't understand it.
That is so insidious. It's an energy-saving strategy for them and an energy-draining strategy for you.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've climbed this mountain of formal terminology. We have our fatuous, ego-driven corporate speaker. We have our noisy, inane chatterboxes and our silent, vacuous smilers.
A great cast of characters.
Truly. And we have the stubborn, asinine excuse makers digging their hooves into the dirt. And we have the obtuse players dodging responsibility.
Right.
But practically speaking, people don't usually invoke Latin roots and formal literary prose when someone cuts them off in traffic or messes up a project at work.
No, they definitely don't. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at how societies actually function in real life. Language is a social contract. If you go around formally diagnosing everyone's bad judgment using words like vacuous or obtuse, you're going to fracture your social bonds very quickly.
Oh, yeah. You'd be the least popular person in the office.
Exactly. It's too direct and it's too clinical. So everyday people communicate these exact same high-level psychological concepts using idioms.
Ah, idioms.
Yeah, we don't always need a dictionary to express these nuances. We use shared cultural metaphors instead.
The idioms of folly. I find these fascinating because they are so highly visual. The lexicon provides several classic examples used to describe a lack of intelligence or poor judgment, and they all map beautifully onto the formal concepts we just discussed.
They really do map one-to-one.
Let's look at one that is very common: a few sandwiches short of a picnic.
It's such a brilliantly humorous way to describe someone who lacks common sense.
It is.
It implies a structural failure rather than a malicious one. The person showed up to the park, they laid out the blanket, the intention is there, but the core substance, the actual meal, is just missing essential components.
So it's kind of forgiving.
Yes. It's a gentle, affectionate way of describing someone whose logic is just fundamentally incomplete.
Yeah.
It maps very closely to a vacuous state, but it packages it in a way that feels much friendlier.
Right. Contrast that gentle image with something much more deliberate and behavioral, like to bury one's head in the sand.
That one is very active.
Yeah. The source defines this as choosing to ignore obvious facts or refusing to face a clear problem out of sheer foolishness.
Right. And if we look at our formal vocabulary, burying one's head in the sand is the exact behavioral manifestation of being obtuse.
Oh, because they're dodging again.
Exactly. You see the problem approaching on the horizon, and instead of dealing with it, you actively plunge your own vision into the darkness. You are deliberately making yourself blind to the obvious so you don't have to take action.
So the idiom just gives us a vivid physical image for that psychological dodge.
Precisely.
Then we have an idiom that deals specifically with resource management, which is honestly its own entire genre of bad judgment. Folly with money or time.
Oh, definitely.
The phrase is penny wise and pound foolish, meaning a person is extremely careful about small amounts, but completely careless and disastrously unwise with large amounts.
This one is a profound failure of scale and a great example of cognitive miscalibration.
Cognitive miscalibration, I like that.
Yeah, it describes the person who will spend 3 hours meticulously clipping coupons to save 50 cents on paper towels, but then signs a mortgage with an exorbitant predatory interest rate without even reading the paperwork.
Wow. Yeah, I think we all know someone like that.
Right. Their judgment isn't completely broken. They understand the concept of saving value, but they exhaust all their cognitive load on the trivial matters, leaving them entirely defenseless against the massive ones.
And finally, we have what might be the most ubiquitous phrase in the modern conversational toolkit for pointing out foolishness. Not the sharpest tool in the shed.
A classic. The source material rightly points out this is an indirect idiom used to politely say someone simply isn't very intelligent. But it functions incredibly well as a social buffer.
It does. I always think of it as linguistic bubble wrap.
Linguistic bubble wrap.
Yeah. Because if you look a colleague in the eye and say, your behavior today was vacuous and asinine, well, those are fighting words.
Oh, absolutely.
You're dropping a heavy academic anvil right on their head, and human resources will probably get involved.
Very likely.
But if you lean over to your friend and whisper, well, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, you get to call out the folly, release your frustration, but entirely soften the social blow.
Right. The metaphor distances you from the cruelty of a direct insult.
Exactly.
That is the ultimate utility of idioms. They allow society to police behavior and collectively acknowledge bad judgment without necessarily inciting a formal, direct conflict.
So they keep the peace.
Yeah, they're collaborative metaphors.
Yeah.
We all agree on what the shed is, we all agree on what the tools are, and we all collectively agree that some are meant for precision cutting and some are just dull hammers.
Yeah.
It's a shared cultural coping mechanism.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? We started out trying to find the right words for that staggering moment of bad judgment in the grocery store.
Right.
And what we have unpacked is an entire mental taxonomy of human error. We've seen that foolishness isn't a monolith. It has highly distinct flavors and mechanisms.
It really does.
You can now identify the unearned, ego-driven smugness of the fatuous person. You can spot the empty, noisy output of the inane or the blank, silent void of the vacuous.
You'd have the labels now.
You can recognize the stubborn, sunk-cost resistance of an asinine excuse. And you know how to label the maddening, weaponized ignorance of the obtuse. You are officially armed with the tools to categorize the psychological chaos around you.
This raises an important question, though, a lingering thought for you to mull over long after we wrap up here today.
Okay, lay it on us.
Well, we've just unpacked an incredibly rich, diverse set of vocabulary and deeply entrenched idioms dedicated entirely to describing the many shades of foolishness. If language fundamentally reflects what a culture cares about most, if we invent words for the things we encounter and have to navigate constantly, what does it say about humanity that we have engineered so many brilliantly precise ways to point out each other's bad judgment?
That is a really great question.
Are we just naturally observant, highly critical creatures seeking order? Or is folly simply the most universal defining human trait of all, requiring endless categorization because it is the one thing we can never quite escape?
The next time you are standing in that endless line and you see someone do something that absolutely defies all logic and reason, don't just get frustrated. Let that moment become a field study.
Yes, observe it.
Figure out if they are a few sandwiches short of a picnic or if they are just playing an incredibly obtuse game of dodgeball. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the lexicon. Keep observing, keep categorizing, and most importantly, keep questioning the world around you.